On today's show, let's look ahead to the full 2023-24 season. It's here. Let's preview it on a new episode of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for his work, as always, on production. And this is your daily look at the one and only Cleveland Cavaliers. The 2023-2024 season is here. If you're listening to this on the 25th, we had two games last night. Cavs begin their season tonight, 7:30 in Brooklyn, home this weekend against Oklahoma City and Indiana. Evan, let's start with, we're going to do three things today. Segment one, where do the Cavs finish in the East? Who is their competition for those particular spots in the East? Segment two, we're going to go best case and worst case. And then segment three, final predictions. We're going to pick our finals winner, our finals matchup, where the Cavs ultimately finish this season. How far do they go? Where does this end for them? Let's start with where do the Cavs finish? Evan, right now you had to predict. We're going to predict. Where are the Cavs going to finish in the regular season in the Eastern Conference?
I think they finished third place in the Eastern Conference. I know we talked about them gunning for that first seed, but I think with the new rest rules in place and also the everything just like with the in-season tournament and just kind of like there being a little bit higher stakes in this season, and also with how competitive the upper half of the Eastern Conference is, like, we've hardly touched on Philly, but like they still have Joel Embiid, who is the reigning MVP and will likely be the scoring champion again this season. And it depends on what they get for James Harden, of course, if they do end up moving Harden or Harden comes back to Philly. But yeah, like I think Cleveland just finishes as the third seed. Maybe they can avoid the boogeyman that is Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks in the first round. But then they'd likely face the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round, in my opinion. That's just how I see things going. How about you?
I look at third seed in the East. I think there is going to be some competition there. I think the Cavs are not in that upper tier. I think some of the teams they're going to be competing against for those spots are the Knicks, the 76ers, who are in disarray, but they still have Joel Embiid. There's Miami's there and Atlanta's there. I think they're going to finish third because I think last year we saw how good of a regular season team they were. And I also think you look at some of these situations, and like Philly is an opportunity for them with how Philly's in a weird spot. There is a great opportunity there for them to push and finish ahead of them in a way they didn't last year. Miami, we know, has not always been the best in the regular season. Atlanta would have to take a really massive step up to get into this conversation in a real way. And look, I think the Knicks are going to be good. They beat the Cavs last year. There's some credence there, but regular season-wise, I think the Cavs will be better. I think, frankly, like it's third or fourth is the most likely. I would guess third as of right now. And I would also, there's a non-zero chance I don't know what percentage I would have finally put it at, Evan, but I think there's a non-zero chance that they do maybe end up at 2, just in a world where things break right for them. They're great in the regular season. One of the two teams above them deals with some injuries or something, and that opens the door to get to 2. But if I had to guess today, I agree with you. I think it's 3. It'll be competitive, but I think it's 3.
So I think 2 is a realistic path as well, with Milwaukee being the 3 seed, because I know I talked about in the first episode, like the defensive upside between Brooke and Chris and Giannis, but losing Drew Holiday does hurt quite a bit, and having to cover Damian Lillard may hurt a lot more. And I think the Bucks are going to be more offensive focuses here, where the Bucks could take a step back a little bit defensively during the regular season. There could be games they lose to teams they shouldn't lose to, or they just kind of give up more points than they're comfortable with in the years past, just because they're adding in that Damian Lillard wrinkle, who, to your credit, is the worst defensive player in the NBA currently. Let's see how this rookie class goes, of course, but like in terms of the star players, he's the worst defensive player in the league. But yeah, I think that's a realistic path. And then you just flip-flop between Milwaukee and Cleveland come second round, assuming both teams make it out of the first round. It's no easier matchup. The Cavs theoretically have at least opened the series at home versus on the road, and that's beneficial for the Cavs of last year, where they were a much better home team than they were a road team. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think 2-3, like that's a toss up right there. You could make an argument for either, just depending on how things shake out. Also, yeah, like you said, 4 could be a path too, just depending on what happens with Philly, or do the Heat stop being the zombie Heat and they maybe do more in the regular season, or maybe New York does take that proverbial step forward, especially now because they are the Villanova New York Knicks now. And I don't know, like Brooklyn's going to be an annoying team. Indiana's going to be pesky. Chicago, for what it's worth, despite maybe their lumps and flaws, is going to be a pretty good team too. Orlando is going to be a lot more annoying. Like there's a lot of good teams that are kind of like in the middle as well, that could be nipping at teams like the Cavs or Milwaukee or even Boston's heels. That could kind of affect the calculus of how the regular season standings finish up.
As a point of comparison for last year, and obviously I think Cleveland has added pieces that will help them. Maybe they get some better injury luck. Just in terms of, maybe Jared Allen doesn't miss time. Maybe Donovan Mitchell plays like into the 70s or something like that. If you look at last year,
well, that's a miracle of medicine if Donovan Mitchell plays into his 70s.
Well, I said 70 games.
If you look 70s.
I meant as in 70 games, not 70s. If you look at last year, expected win differential, the Cavs were one of the worst teams in the league in terms of like getting lucky and actually winning the games you would think based on their net rating. And that doesn't, there's obviously other reasons for that. It's not just bad luck. There are mistakes. There are like whatever it is. They were a 51 win team with the point differential of a 55 win team.
Wow.
There is like that in terms of regular season wins. The only team that had a better expected wins was Boston at 57.2, Memphis at 53.2, Milwaukee at 51.9, Philly at 51.4. Denver, who won it all, 50.1. Okay, obviously this doesn't mean everything. This doesn't mean, oh, they're better than these teams. Oh, they're on the same level as these teams. Mm-hmm. But I do just think with maybe a more normal year, there's a very real scenario where the Cavs just run up a ton of regular season wins and end up winning 55, 56 games. That wouldn't shock me if that's where they end up, and that puts them in conversation for the 2 seed or a really high win 3 seed if that's how the conference breaks. Boston could win 58 games, I wouldn't be shocked. If Cleveland's right there in the regular season, at least, that wouldn't shock me either.
No, neither of those things would really shock me, and I think that is the beauty of how talented the Eastern Conference has become, and I think that just makes it more exciting because there's a lot of top end teams, and just the rich are the richest in terms of Milwaukee and Boston, and then Cleveland is trying to break into that tier. But then you have a lot of teams that are in the same spot as Cleveland, or also just maybe trying to get into the spot the Cavs are in now. And yeah, like you said, the Cavs could win 56, 57, 58 games, and that could be good enough to get the first seed in the East. Also could be good enough just to get the 3rd or 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. It just depends on how everything shakes out record-wise across the board. The Pistons aren't going to be great this year. I think the Hornets are going to be objectively terrible this year. Other than that, maybe Washington. Washington's going to be the worst team in the East.
Washington's going to be the worst team in the NBA. I have no doubt about that in my mind. That team's going to absolutely be garbage.
Them or Portland, if Portland gets rid of Brogdon and Jeremy Grant. So, but other than that, but it's going to be a mid-off between Portland and Washington for worst team in the East. But Jordan Poole is going to lead the NBA in probably a lot of funny statistics with Kuzma this year. But that's neither here nor there. But other than those teams I mentioned in the East, a lot of these squads are going to be trying to scrap and fight to get either a play-in or a playoff spot, preferably a playoff spot so you can deal with less of the chaos of the play-in tournament. But that's going to be just kind of fun and exciting. And a lot of these team games are going to be a bit of a slugfest, but the Cavs could just have a monumentally successful season and it's still they got the 3rd or 4th seed, and that's just the nature of the beast. Then that's what the Eastern Conference is at this point.
Coming up next, we're going to go through best case, worst case for the Cavs this upcoming season. We'll talk about that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, a wonderful returning sponsor that we're very excited to have back here at Locked On. And PrizePicks is going to let you have a ton of fun playing and watching sports this year. You can test your skills on PrizePicks this football season in the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You could turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. It's really easy to play. You make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Examples of things you could pick and stack them up is Saquon Barkley for more than 60 yards, Patrick Mahomes for more than 2 touchdowns, Travis Kelce for more than 50 yards receiving. That feels like a lock. Get Browns ones as well.
Get the one over 100 if you can, folks. The Swift effect is real for Travis.
But PrizePicks, by the way, has a reboot policy with your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half or does not return in the second, the player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury assurance. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use our code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, lowercase, and use our code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, check that out. Use our promo code LockedOnNBA up to $100 first deposit. Evan, let's start positive. Give me your Cavs' best case for the upcoming season.
Best case scenario, obviously, it's a championship, but let's be a little bit more realistic. I think an Eastern Conference Finals appearance, and you really do make the case if you're the Cavs that, one, Evan Mobley takes that proverbial year 3 leap, and he is pretty clearly your best or second best player heading into next season. And more than that, like, you do showcase that the Cavs building this out organically is bearing for this organization and this team, and they are getting ready to seize the momentum of being a actual wrecking force in the Eastern Conference as a team like Milwaukee maybe starts to age out over the next few years, or maybe they bide their time with Boston as well. Like the Cavs are primed in a position to maybe start building the foundation of running the East for a little bit. And it does start with this season. It does start with an actual playoff run. I don't think they make the NBA Finals, but like Eastern Conference Finals is like your pie in the sky, realistic pie in the sky scenario, and you go out in like 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, I think I don't think this team has. It would be surprising me if they made the finals. It would be even more shocking if they won the finals. I don't think they're on that level. I think if you project them to make the leap from where they were in the playoffs last year all the way to the top, you're just a crazy optimist, and I love that for you. I am just more of a pragmatist. I look at this situation, and I look at this year, and I agree with you. I think the best case is you win a ton of regular season games, you maybe get a 2 seed, and then you make the conference finals, and that gives you something to build on. I think that kind of season and what it would entail, with Evan Mobley having a big year, with Darius Garland maybe having an all-star year, with Donovan Mitchell maybe being satisfied and wanting to stick around. I think that gets you to a position where you feel like you have footing. And if there's anything that I felt coming off of last year, Evan, that was abundantly clear with how they lost and where we are now, I do think Cleveland in this era is still somewhat looking for its footing a little bit to really solidify what is being built here, what is going on here, and where this ultimately can get to.
Yeah, and I'll say, let me ask you this, just in terms of like best case scenario. If the Cavs do make like a legitimate run in the playoffs, they do make the Eastern Conference Finals, and they really do at least give, let's just assume, one of Boston or Milwaukee a hard time when they get there and aren't an easy out. Do you think that increases Cleveland's chances of having Donovan Mitchell re-up with them this summer, or do you think that's just too much uncertainty, or like you shake the magic 8 ball and it says, please ask again?
Look, there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there about like Mitchell's like just is gonna leave, whatever. I think if I'm gonna be like an optimist about that for a second, I think if this year Look, if they have a great year this year and he still wants to leave, then there's nothing you could have done to keep him.
That's a very pragmatic and realistic way to look at it. Like, best year possible if you're the Cavs, and that's still not good enough for Donovan. His heart was never fully in Cleveland to begin with, and that's of no disservice on the Cavs' part, I guess.
Yeah, and look, that we'll see, but I think that says it well. All right, worst case. Evan,
we're in the same boat, by the way.
Yeah. Does it repeat last year? Does this worst case repeat last year? Do all of these changes, do all of them just lead you getting bounced again like last year, and then you're left wondering, what is this?
Yeah, that's your worst case scenario, or God willing, like you either don't make the playoffs or end up in the play-in tournament somehow.
Okay,
that's something objectively terrible has to happen.
Yeah,
but
that's
speaking,
that's the world has imploded. Yeah,
COVID part 2 happens. Assuming everyone's healthy, and the Cavs just do Cavalier things. If they come out with flat on their face and end up with more egg on their face and then 2 cartons worth, there is just going to be more questions than there are answers. And there's a few things maybe that could indicate that. Maybe Mobley doesn't take that offensive leap a lot of us were hoping for, just in terms of, he could be more involved, but he's not adding more to as like a scoring threat. It's more of like a passing thing, but like you need him to do more offensively and scoring wise. Karis LeVert maybe regresses a little bit, and that hurts your bench production. Darius Garland doesn't kind of surpass the level that he played at last year, which was pretty amazing. And we talked about this in the Donovan Mitchell episode, but we saw a lot of great stuff last year. If he just doesn't show up for the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row, 2nd year this time around with Cleveland, like, there's going to be way more questions than there are answers about this team. And then there's just going to be a lot of wholesale change at the top. That could be an overreaction trade. That could be coaches getting fired. That could be changes at the top in terms of the front office. Like, 2 years of failure if you're the Cavs isn't a good thing when you have, at least on paper, one of the most talented young rosters in the league, and you have to show actual tangible signs of growth when the games matter most. And that's the worst case scenario, is like getting bounced in 4 or 5 games in the first round.
Give me a scale 1 to 10. You ask me a question, I'm asking you a question.
Sure.
Scale 1 to 10, how confident are you that the Cavs can actually reach some version of their potential this year? Scale 1 to 10, give me a number.
8.5. That 15% margin of error
might be
gives me a little.
That might be the most optimistic thing you've ever said.
Yeah, considering how much of a cynic I am. But I am a firm believer in the Cavs taking a more modern approach. I think there is some tangible data during the preseason that we can somewhat sink our teeth into in terms of just like pace and maybe just sense of urgency and shot charts and things like that, just to like kind of start to paint the picture of what this team could be offensively, because I think they're still going to be very, very good defensively. Even better than last year. But I here's my hot take. I think the Cavs take a step back from the number 1 team in the NBA defensively, and they're a top 5 team, which is by no means a bad thing, but that's because they're more focused on an offensive approach instead of just relying solely on defense, just winning them every single game. But I think 8.5 out of 10, so an 85% chance of like it's a successful season for them, just because they did go out and make wholesale changes to add 1, depth, which is something they did not really have against the Knicks last year. And 2, the depth is shooting, which is something the Cavs have needed for the longest time. And when you have George Niang, Max Strus, Ty Jerome, like, those guys aren't your superstars. And you also re-signed Karis LeVert, but those guys aren't your superstars. They're high-end role players that you play on a night-to-night basis, but they will be guys that do make a difference in certain games. And that's where I feel a little bit more optimistic about it. How about you?
I go 6.5.
Okay.
I think this team's going to be really good. I think this team's going to win a lot of games. I am just of the mind that based on how the playoffs went last year, it's absolutely prove it time.
Oh yeah. Like, I'm being optimistic, but I do need to see it. Like, we talk about this. I think Jared Allen said it best. Like, the Cavs are going to be judged on their postseason success going forward. Like, regular season success only gets you so far. And if they lose again, I'm just going to throw my hands up in the first round like they did last year. I'm going to throw my hands up and say, I don't understand this team. They have all the talent in the world. but they can't put it together when it matters most. And they are the Mike Budenholzer Atlanta Hawks of the second LeBron era.
Yeah, look,
they are
if this
elite in the regular season and then just get absolutely punked in the postseason.
If this season ends like it did last year, there's a reckoning coming. We'll see where that ends up. All right, coming up next, we're going to make some predictions. Let's dive in. All right, back here, Locked On Cavs. Last segment here for you, Evan. Let's go. Where the cat? Let's do. There's not a great perfect way to order this, but let's go with where do you think the Cavs finish the season first? Where do you think the season actually ends for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Oh, I thought we talked about this in the first segment. I think they finished the third seed in the Eastern Conference.
Playoffs.
Oh,
where are they actually ending up in the playoffs? Yeah.
I think I honestly couldn't tell you like 5 through 8 what the standings are going to be, but I think the standings for the top half of the East will be Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. And then the Cavs could draw like Miami, New York, Orlando, Indiana, Brooklyn, anyone. I think Cleveland has the juice to take care of that. I think Milwaukee gets through the first round as well. And then that series turns into a bit of a bloodbath. I don't want to say the Cavs lie down and lose in 4 or 5 to the Bucks, because the Bucks are certainly a much more physical team that can hit certain pressure points that maybe they exploited last year. But I want to say they lose to Milwaukee in 6, maybe 7 games in the second round. And then Milwaukee goes on to face the winner of the likely series between Philadelphia and Boston for the Eastern Conference title. What about you?
Yeah, I go second round. I think they're either going to lose to one of those two really good teams. I think they're going to get, I think it's going to be like Philly or Miami in round 1. I think they're going to get by one of those teams that's pretty solid. I think the Knicks are might be 4, if I'm being honest. I think they're going to be really good, and there's not as much uncertainty with them. I think Cleveland gets through round 1, and I think they get one of these 2 elite teams in the East and bow out there later in this round, acquit themselves well, and we'll see where that gets them. All right, Evan, who's your NBA Finals pick?
NBA Finals pick. I'll get a little spice here. Western Conference Finals, I have the Lakers beating the Suns in 6, and then in the Eastern Conference Finals, I have Milwaukee beating Boston in 6 or 7 games. So title series would be between the Lakers and the Bucks. I think the Lakers win that series in 6 games.
You're picking the Lakers. You're just no mention of the Denver Nuggets. I think
the Nuggets draw the Lakers in the second round. The Lakers win that series in 7. There's my through line. I really like the offseason the Lakers had. I am very high on what Los Angeles is going to be this year.
I think there's a case for them to win the title. It's just watch what Denver did to them last year. I don't think they added anything that's going to prevent they did.
Minus 20 for the Nuggets City Edition uniforms. So just tomato.
Plus 500 for Nikola Jokic being the best player alive. My finals pick, it's Milwaukee, Denver. Denver's awesome.
I don't disagree with you. I wouldn't be surprised. But
yeah, and I think Milwaukee's going to be the best team in the East at the end of the day. And I just trust their health a little bit more than I do Boston's.
So who do you have winning that series though?
Denver. I'm picking Denver to win it.
Okay.
Denver, I don't know the games, but
the
Denver.
Loss of Bruce Brown and maybe leaning more on those younger players could hurt them at all.
Yeah, but I think all of these teams have real risks. I think
fair.
The late let's run through these upper echelon teams possibly.
Sure.
Milwaukee's depth is shaky. Jay Crowder's out here depending the point of attack in preseason. Things are weird. They don't have Drew Holiday anymore, even if they got
it in all caps, boss man.
Boston has Al Horford, who is incredibly old at this point, and they have Chris Stapps, who's injury concern, and we'll see if their depth can be fully trusted. Denver's banking on young guys to really step up and replace what they got from a bunch of different positions, which is a risk, but they planned for it in a way that I think gives me some optimism. And Jokic I made this comp on the Just Basketball show. Jokic is to NBA role guys who understand what they need to do in terms of shooting and moving and playing defense, like Patrick Mahomes is to crappy NFL wide receivers. He will make you good because he is that good. That is what that guy's superpower is. The Lakers, yes, they have LeBron and AD. Yes, they had a great offseason, but there's injuries.
pause. Is Jamal Murray like the Travis Kelce in this comparison then? Because I could, you could, like, I think Jamal Murray can make an all NBA case this year. Like, I'm high on him too, but proceed.
Yeah, I think that's possible. The Lakers, it's like LeBron's deeper than he's ever been in terms of his minutes. AD's injury concern. Like, there's stuff, like, all these teams have risks. All these teams have potential flaws. I look at it, and to me, it's Denver and it's Milwaukee, and I'm picking Denver and Nikola Jokic to repeat. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's Milwaukee, but I think I would go, to me, like, the teams I have in my upper echelon tier, it's Boston and Milwaukee, and it's Phoenix, and it's Denver, and Denver just, I think they're going to be great. I just wouldn't shock me if we do this all again, and it's like, yes, Denver's the best team in the world.
That wouldn't surprise me either, and I think that's the fun thing with, like, you can complain a lot about Adam Silver's NBA, but there's a lot of really good competitive teams across the spectrum, and I think that's what makes it fun. Is it's not like the LeBron James Heatles or the Kevin Durant Warriors where you're like, okay, there's kind of like a clear favorite here. Obviously, the revenge tour Spurs that kind of made LeBron leave Miami on top of other things, notwithstanding, of course, but I don't know. I'm interested. Phoenix, to me, I think was going to have like one of the most efficient offenses in basketball, and Frank Vogel's going to coach the heck out of that defense. But the lack at point does a little bit concern me. But they did eviscerate teams in the preseason, so they're going to be fine. But they do have a lot of health questions for me too. Like when it comes to at least Brad Beal and especially Kevin Durant.
Oh, for sure. I think again, all these teams have risks, but I think there's two teams.
That's the nature of the beast too. Like every team has an inherent risk when it comes to this stuff.
There's some parity. Like there's some, not a ton. I still think there's elite tier, but there's some parity there. All right, that's going to be it for today's. Well, go ahead.
Let's do the run on awards before we go. Who do you think wins MVP?
I haven't thought about this.
I think it's Jokic.
I'm gonna go Jokic. I just think he gets the crown.
And then there's going to be a little bit of beef because Embiid has an impressive season, wins the scoring title, but doesn't get MVP. Wemby is obviously,
but he's like, they're going to be like this. They're going to be like the six. They're going to be like the 6th seed.
Well, they could be like the 7 or the Sixers.
Defensive Player of the Year. I'm gonna go Bam.
I think it's Evan Mobley. I think that's the most likely Cavs centric award is Defensive Player of the Year with Mobley.
Yeah, I think that's like probably the only award, but I'm just going to go Bam because I think he's really good, and I think he's going to win one at some point.
Rookie
could be
of the
Mobley,
year,
though. We
all agree it's Victor Wembanyama, unless it's just completely out there. Coach of the year, I don't know.
We're into like you can't predict this territory. I'll give you two last ones. Yes or no, does Donovan Mitchell make an All-NBA team again this year?
Yes.
I'm gonna say yes too, but I'm not super confident in that.
That's why I paused and I made a face because I'm like, last year might be hard to repeat, but.
And then how many Cavs All-Stars? I'm gonna go 2.
I'm going to say 1 with a possibility of 2. The 1 for sure is Mitchell, and then the possible 2 is either Garland or Mobley.
Who's more likely to make the All-Star team, Mobley or Garland?
Garland. Just because Garland's going to get in on the fan vote and then the coach vote, but the fan vote does have weight. If Garland has like a couple bonkers offensive games, all the casuals on NBA Twitter will be like, oh yeah, vote Darius Garland. Or Cavs Twitter is just like a monster in of itself. They'll vote for Darius Garland, whereas Evan Mobley does like the intangible stuff that like counting stats don't track, and basketball nerds like you and me get juiced over.
I think big man might just be like an easier path.
Also fair. Adam Silver also said it could be conferences this year too versus the player draft. So who knows?
Yeah. For the record, Mobley plus 700 to win Defensive Player of the Year at FanDuel. Jaren Jackson plus 500. AD is plus 850, Giannis plus 850, Bam plus 1200, Victor Wembanyama is plus 1200, Rudy Gobert plus 2000, Brook Lopez plus 2000, Walker Kessler plus 2,200, and the list goes on and on and on. Jared Allen plus 5,000 if you wanted to waste some money on a Jared Allen DPOY wager at FanDuel. All right, that's going to be it, though. We'll be back Thursday. Cavs Nets recap. First one of the regular season. Cannot wait for this game. Cannot wait for actual basketball to be back. Very excited. Talk to you then. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for his work on production. Peace out, everybody. Have a good one.